The morning sun painted the Montana sky in shades of amber as 12-year-old Emma wiped the dust from her hands on her worn jeans. The Henderson Ranch had been her home for 3 years now, ever since the accident that took her parents. Mrs. Henderson was kind enough, feeding her, clothing her, giving her a roof over her head, but the ache in Emma's chest never fully went away. She was cleaning out the old storage room when her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic wedged behind a loose wooden plank. Her heart stopped. It was her mother's silver phone, the one she thought had been lost in the crash. The screen was cracked, spider webbing across her mother's smiling face in the wallpaper photo. With trembling hands, Emma pressed the power button. Miraculously, it flickered to life, showing just enough battery for one last use. Her breath caught as she saw a voice memo recorded the night before the accident. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., just hours before everything changed forever. But as she pressed play, only silence filled the air. The phone's speaker was damaged, probably from the impact. Emma's eyes filled with tears until she noticed something else. A pair of old earbuds tangled in the charging cable, their white cords yellowed with age. Her mother's voice would be waiting for her, if only she could find a way to listen. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, her weathered face softening when she saw what Emma was holding. "Oh, honey, where did you find that old thing?" "Behind the wall," Emma whispered, clutching the phone to her chest like a lifeline. "There's a message from Mom. I need to hear it." Mrs. Henderson's expression grew troubled, worry lines deepening around her eyes. "Emma, sweetie, that phone hasn't worked properly in years. The ranch hands tried to fix it after—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe it's better to let sleeping dogs lie." But Emma shook her head fiercely, her dark hair whipping around her face. "No, Mrs. Henderson, this is all I have left of her. I have to try." Later that evening, Emma sat on her narrow bed staring at the phone. She had tried every charger in the house, every speaker, every possible way to coax sound from the device. Nothing worked. The earbuds were too old, incompatible with modern devices. Her last hope lay in the old boombox in the barn, the one with an auxiliary cord that might, just might, be compatible with the phone's ancient headphone jack. The problem was the barn. It wasn't just any barn, it was Thunder's domain. Thunder was a massive black bull that had terrorized the ranch for 2 years. He had injured 3 ranch hands and destroyed countless pieces of equipment. Even Mr. Henderson, a man who had worked with cattle his entire life, wouldn't go near the animal without backup. Thunder lived alone in the largest stall, a prisoner of his own rage and isolation. Emma stood at her bedroom window, staring across the moonlit yard at the barn. Its red paint was peeling and weathered, and she could see scratches and dents in the wooden walls where Thunder had vented his fury. Somewhere in that darkness was her mother's voice, waiting to bridge the gap between life and death, between then and now. But between Emma and that voice stood 2,000 pounds of pure fury. She touched the phone screen one more time, watching her mother's contact photo appear. Sarah Miller, with her warm smile and gentle eyes. The way she looked when she used to read Emma bedtime stories. What had she wanted to say that was so important she recorded it in the middle of the night? Emma made her decision. Tomorrow, when everyone was busy with the cattle auction in town, she would face Thunder alone. She would hear her mother's voice, no matter what it cost her. As she drifted off to sleep, Emma whispered into the darkness, "I'm coming, Mom. I'm going to hear what you wanted to tell me." The wind picked up outside, rattling her window like restless spirits trying to warn her of the danger ahead. But would a 12-year-old girl's love for her mother be enough to calm a beast that had defeated grown men? The next morning arrived with unusual quiet. Emma watched from her window as the Henderson family loaded into their pickup truck, heading to the cattle auction in Billings. She had volunteered to stay behind, claiming she felt sick. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her stomach churned with fear and determination, a toxic cocktail that made her feel lightheaded. Once their truck disappeared down the dusty road, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust in its wake, Emma gathered her courage and walked toward the barn. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the earth itself was trying to hold her back. The old boombox was tucked under her arm, along with her mother's phone, and a prayer she hoped someone was listening to. The barn stood like a cathedral of shadows, its red paint peeling and weathered by countless Montana winters. As Emma approached, she could hear him. Thunder. The sound of hooves striking wood echoed from within, rhythmic and violent, followed by a snort that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Emma's hand trembled as she pushed open the heavy door. The hinges groaned in protest, a sound like a scream in the morning stillness. The scent of hay and leather mixed with something else, something wild and dangerous that made her primitive instincts scream at her to run. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light, and there he was. Thunder stood in the largest stall at the far end, his massive frame silhouetted against the slanted sunbeams that pierced through gaps in the wooden walls. He was magnificent and terrifying, his black coat gleaming like polished obsidian. Scars covered his flanks, evidence of his battles with ropes, gates, and anyone foolish enough to challenge him. His horns were massive, sharp enough to gore a grown man in seconds. The bull's head turned toward her, and Emma felt her knees nearly buckle. His eyes weren't just angry, they held something deeper. Pain, loneliness, the same ache she carried in her own chest, the same emptiness that gnawed at her in the quiet moments between sleep and waking. "Easy, Thunder," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hammering of her own heart. "I'm not here to hurt you." The bull snorted and pawed the ground, sending up clouds of dust that caught the morning light. But he didn't charge. Instead, he watched her with an intensity that made Emma feel as though he could see into her soul, past her fear to the desperate love that had driven her here. She noticed something else, too. There were old apple cores scattered near his stall, evidence that someone had tried to befriend him before. Someone who had cared enough to bring treats, to attempt kindness in the face of his rage. Emma spotted the boombox she needed on a workbench just 10 feet from Thunder's stall. It might as well have been on the moon. To reach it, she would have to walk directly past the bull, close enough that he could easily strike her down with one swing of his massive head. She took a deep breath and started forward. Thunder's ears flicked back, and his breathing became more labored. Visible puffs of steam in the cool air. Emma forced herself to keep walking, her mother's phone clutched tightly in her sweating palm like a talisman. "My mom used to say that hurt animals just need someone to understand them," Emma said softly as she inched closer, her voice growing stronger with each word. She rescued a wounded hawk once, and everyone said it was too dangerous. But she knew better. She could see past the fear to the pain underneath. Thunder's head lowered slightly, and Emma could swear she saw something change in his expression. The rage was still there, but underneath it was something else. Curiosity, maybe even hope. If you enjoyed this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales that will touch your heart. She was almost to the workbench now, close enough to smell the bull's warm breath, close enough to see the old rope burns around his neck, scars that told a story of cruelty and confinement. Her fingers closed around the boombox just as Thunder took a step forward. Emma froze, certain this was the end. But instead of attacking, the bull simply stretched his neck toward her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his massive body, close enough to see her own reflection in his dark eyes. With the boombox in her hands and Thunder watching her every move, Emma carefully connected her mother's phone. The auxiliary cord slipped into place with a soft click that seemed to echo through the barn. Her finger hovered over the play button as she looked into Thunder's dark eyes. "She wanted to tell me something important," Emma whispered to the bull. "Something she couldn't wait until morning to say." Thunder lowered his head further, and for a moment, Emma could almost believe he understood. She pressed play, and the barn filled with the crackling static of an old recording. Then, clear as a bell, her mother's voice filled the air, wrapping around them like a ghost made of sound and memory. "My dearest Emma, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone, and you found a way to listen despite everything trying to stop you." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but as her mother's voice continued, the words that came next would change everything she thought she knew about her family, about Thunder, and about the night her parents died. What secret had her mother discovered that was so dangerous she had to hide this message? And why did Thunder seem to recognize her voice? Emma's heart pounded as her mother's voice continued to flow from the speakers, each word hitting her like a physical blow. Thunder had grown completely still, his massive head tilted as if he too was listening to every syllable, understanding something that went beyond human comprehension. Emma, what I'm about to tell you will be hard to hear, but you deserve the truth. The ranch you're living on now, the Henderson Ranch, it's not what it seems. I discovered something terrible, something that cost your father and me our lives. Emma's hands shook as she gripped the boombox, her knuckles white with tension. The car accident that killed her parents, it hadn't been an accident at all. The official report had blamed icy roads and poor visibility, but her mother's voice was telling a different story entirely. I found evidence that Mr. Henderson has been running illegal cattle through the ranch, stealing livestock from neighboring farms and altering their brands. When your father and I confronted him with what we discovered, he threatened us. But Emma, there's something else. Something about the bull in their barn. Thunder shifted restlessly, and Emma noticed fresh scars on his flanks. Scars that looked suspiciously like brand marks that had been burned over and over again, as if someone had been trying to obscure his original identification. Her mother's voice grew urgent, filled with a desperate energy that made Emma's chest tighten. That bull, Thunder. He belonged to the Morrison family before Henderson stole him. Mrs. Morrison called him Midnight, and he was the gentlest giant you'd ever meet. Henderson has been torturing him, trying to make him so wild and dangerous that no one would recognize him as the prize bull he really is. Emma gasped, looking at Thunder with new eyes. This magnificent, angry creature wasn't naturally violent. He had been driven to rage by cruelty and pain. The scars, the fury, the isolation. It all made horrible sense now. He wasn't a monster, he was a victim. I hid this recording because I knew Henderson would destroy any evidence if he found it. Emma, if something happens to us, you have to find Thunder. You have to help him remember who he really was before the pain consumed him. And baby, you have to be careful. Henderson will do anything to protect his secrets. The recording crackled with static, and Emma could hear her mother crying softly, the sound breaking her heart all over again. I love you more than all the stars in the Montana sky, sweetheart. Be brave, be smart, and remember that sometimes the most broken souls just need someone to see past their anger to the hurt underneath. The message ended with a soft click, leaving the barn in profound silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Emma stared at Thunder. No, Midnight, through her tears. This broken, magnificent creature had been suffering for years, transformed from a gentle giant into a symbol of rage and fear through deliberate cruelty. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw what her mother had seen, past the anger to the pain beneath. This wasn't a monster. This was a victim, just like her. They were both prisoners in Henderson's web of lies and violence. Emma slowly approached Midnight's stall, her fear replaced by a burning determination to right the terrible wrongs that had been done. The bull watched her approach, but instead of aggression, she saw curiosity in his dark eyes, maybe even recognition. Your name is Midnight, she whispered, reaching out her hand toward the bars of his stall. And you don't belong here any more than I do. To her amazement, Midnight lowered his massive head toward her outstretched fingers. When their skin touched, Emma felt a connection that transcended words. Two damaged souls recognizing each other across the vast distance of their shared pain and loss. But their moment of peace was shattered by the sound of truck doors slamming outside, the harsh noise cutting through the barn like a knife. The Hendersons had returned early from the auction, and Emma could hear Mr. Henderson's angry voice getting closer to the barn, his words carrying a menace that made her blood freeze. I told you that little brat was up to something, Martha. She's been asking too many questions about her parents, poking around where she doesn't belong. Emma's blood ran cold. She was trapped in the barn with evidence of Henderson's crimes, and the man who had murdered her parents was walking straight toward her. Midnight sensed her fear and began pawing the ground, his protective instincts awakening for the first time in years. As heavy footsteps approached the barn door, Emma made a choice that would change both their lives forever. She reached for the latch on Midnight's stall, her fingers trembling as she prepared to set free the most dangerous animal on the ranch. Could a tortured bull and a grieving girl find the strength to face down a killer? Or would Henderson silence the last witness to his crimes forever? The barn door burst open with a thunderous crash, and Mr. Henderson stepped inside, his face twisted with rage and something darker, desperation. Behind him lurked two of his ranch hands, men Emma had always found unsettling with their cold eyes and cruel smirks. The afternoon light streaming in behind them cast long, ominous shadows across the hay-strewn floor, making them look like demons emerging from hell itself. Well, well, what do we have here? Henderson's voice was cold as winter steel, each word carefully measured and dripping with menace. His eyes immediately went to the boombox in Emma's hands, then to the open stall, where Midnight stood protectively beside her, his massive frame blocking Henderson's path. Snooping around where you don't belong, little girl? Emma's heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird, but she stood her ground, drawing strength from Midnight's presence beside her. I know what you did to my parents. I know about the stolen cattle, and I know what you did to Midnight. Henderson's laugh was harsh and bitter, echoing off the wooden walls like the sound of breaking glass. Midnight? That animal's name is Thunder, and he's been nothing but trouble since the day I bought him fair and square from a livestock dealer. You didn't buy him, Emma shot back, her voice stronger now, fueled by righteous anger in the memory of her mother's words. You stole him from the Morrison family, just like you stole from everyone else, just like you stole my parents' lives when they got too close to the truth. The ranch hands started forward, their heavy boots thudding against the wooden floor, but Henderson held up a hand to stop them. His eyes had turned calculating, dangerous, like a predator sizing up its prey. You're just a confused little orphan girl making up stories. No one's going to believe the fantasies of a traumatized child who's been through so much tragedy. But Emma wasn't backing down. She held up her mother's phone, the silver surface catching the light like a beacon of truth. They'll believe this. My mother recorded everything before you killed her. Every stolen cow, every forged brand, every lie you told. And she knew about Midnight. Henderson's face went white with fury, his composure finally cracking. Give me that phone, Emma. Give it to me now, and maybe I'll make this quick for you. Maybe I'll make it look like an accident, just like I did with your parents. As he stepped forward, something extraordinary happened. Midnight moved between them, his massive frame completely blocking Henderson's path to Emma. The bull's head was lowered, his eyes fixed on the man who had tortured him for years. And for the first time in Emma's memory, she saw something she had never seen before. She saw Mr. Henderson afraid. Get back, you stupid animal, Henderson shouted, but his voice cracked with fear, betraying the terror he felt facing the creature he had brutalized. Boys, get the tranquilizer gun from the truck, now. But Midnight wasn't the broken, rage-filled creature Henderson remembered, standing beside Emma, defending someone who had shown him kindness and recognition. He had remembered who he really was. This was Midnight, the gentle giant who had once won blue ribbons at county fairs, who had been loved and cared for before darkness consumed his world. Emma placed her hand on Midnight's flank, feeling the scars beneath her palm like a map of his suffering. It's okay, boy. We're not alone anymore. As if summoned by her words, the sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Emma smiled through her tears as she recognized the voice calling from outside the barn, a voice that meant salvation. Emma! Emma, are you in there? This is Sheriff Martinez. It was law enforcement, and with them came the most beautiful sound Emma had ever heard. Her mother's voice crackling through a police radio as they played back the recording that would seal Henderson's fate. While Henderson and his men had been chasing Emma, she had already used the ranch's old fax machine to send her mother's evidence to the authorities. Henderson made one last desperate lunge toward Emma, his face contorted with rage and panic. But Midnight was ready. The massive bull reared up on his hind legs, a wall of protective fury that sent Henderson scrambling backward into the arms of the waiting deputies who had surrounded the barn. As the handcuffs clicked around Henderson's wrists, he screamed threats and denials, but Emma wasn't listening anymore. She was looking into Midnight's dark eyes, seeing peace there for the first time since she had known him. Sheriff Martinez approached slowly, his hat in his hands and his weathered face kind. Emma, we've been investigating Henderson for months based on evidence your mother gathered before she died. She was braver than we knew, and so are you. That evening, as the sun set over the Montana plains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Emma watched from the porch of her new home, the Morrison Ranch, where she would live with Mrs. Morrison, who had been searching for her beloved Midnight for 3 long years. In the pasture beyond, Midnight grazed peacefully among the other cattle, his wounds healing, his spirit slowly mending under the care of people who loved him. He was no longer Thunder, the symbol of rage and pain. He was Midnight again, gentle and magnificent, just as her mother had known he could be. Emma pressed play on her mother's phone one more time, listening to the final words of the recording that had saved them both. Remember, sweetheart, even in the darkest night, morning always comes. And sometimes, if we're very brave, we can help others find their way back to the light. As the stars appeared in the vast Montana sky, Emma understood that her mother had given her more than just the truth about Henderson's crimes. She had given her the gift of seeing past the surface, of recognizing that beneath anger and fear often lies a soul desperate to be healed and loved. Have you ever met someone that others feared, but you saw something different in them that no one else could see? Something extraordinary happened. Midnight moved between them, his massive frame completely blocking Henderson's path to Emma. The bull's head was lowered, his eyes fixed on the man who had tortured him for years. For the first time in Emma's memory, she saw Mr. Henderson afraid. "Get back, you stupid animal!" Henderson shouted, but his voice cracked with fear. "Boys, get the tranquilizer gun from the truck." But Midnight wasn't the broken, rage-filled creature Henderson remembered. Standing beside Emma, defending someone who had shown him kindness, he had remembered who he really was. This was Midnight, the gentle giant who had once won blue ribbons at county fairs, who had been loved and cared for before darkness consumed his world. Emma placed her hand on Midnight's flank, feeling the scars beneath her palm. "It's okay, boy. We're not alone anymore." As if summoned by her words, the sound of sirens filled the air. Emma smiled through her tears as she recognized the voice calling from outside the barn. "Emma! Emma! Are you in there?" It was Sheriff Martinez, and with him came the most beautiful sound Emma had ever heard. Her mother's voice, crackling through a police radio. While Henderson and his men had been chasing Emma, she had already sent her mother's recording to the authorities using the ranch's old fax machine. Henderson made one last desperate lunge toward Emma, but Midnight was ready. The massive bull reared up on his hind legs, a wall of protective fury that sent Henderson scrambling backward into the arms of the waiting deputies. As the handcuffs clicked around Henderson's wrists, he screamed threats and denials. But Emma wasn't listening anymore. She was looking into Midnight's dark eyes, seeing peace there for the first time. Sheriff Martinez approached slowly, his hat in his hands. "Emma, we've been investigating Henderson for months based on your mother's evidence. She was braver than we knew, and so are you.